story too. I should have known better than to stop at that motel, especially with how isolated it was, but exhaustion got the better of me. It was late, probably close to midnight, and my eyes were heavy from hours of driving through back roads. My GPS hadn't updated, so I was navigating by instinct, guessing my way through dimly lit routes, and hoping to stumble upon civilization. That's when I saw a low, L-shaped building with a flickering neon motel sign casting a sickly red glow over the parking lot. The sight of it should have been enough to make me keep driving, but my tank was near empty, and my head was pounding from fatigue. The parking lot was mostly empty, except for a few old cars, none of which looked drivable. I parked near the lobby, which was bathed in a dim, yellowish light that flickered occasionally. When I walked in, I was met by a peculiar silence, the kind that presses on your ears and makes every movement feel amplified. The place smelled stale like old coffee and dust, as if it had been a long time since anyone had aired it out. Behind the counter was a thin, elderly man who looked at me with a flat expression. He had a hollow, almost waxy appearance, with pale skin stretched tight over sharp cheekbones, his lips colorless. I told him I needed a room for the night, and he handed me a key labeled room 8. He barely spoke, only nodding once, his eyes lingering on me a bit too long before looking away. The room was as run-down as I expected. The wallpaper peeled at the edges, and the carpet was stained, each mark seeming to tell its own unsettling story. The bedspread was a washed-out green, thin and scratchy, but I was too tired to care. I just needed a few hours of sleep. I dropped my bag on the floor, kicked off my shoes, and lay down, listening to the silence around me. But it was only silent for a moment. Within minutes, I began to notice something odd, soft, muffled noises coming from the walls. At first, I thought it was the pipes or maybe the wind outside, but as I lay there, I realized the noises were rhythmic, like a soft tapping or scratching. It seemed to come from different places in the room: the corner by the bathroom, the wall near the bed, the floor near the window. It was faint, but unmistakable, like something small was crawling just beyond the wallpaper, trapped in the walls. I tried to ignore it, figuring it was just the quirks of an old building, maybe rodents scurrying about. But after half an hour, the noise only grew more insistent. The tapping became sharper, almost like someone was poking through the walls, as though trying to feel their way to the other side. I sat up, turning on the dim lamp by the bed, and looked around. The room was empty, of course, but I felt an eerie prickling at the back of my neck, a sense that I wasn't alone. I told myself to calm down, to just close my eyes and try to sleep. But just as I started to lie back down, I noticed something unsettling: a faint, reddish stain on the carpet right next to the bed, mostly hidden in the shadows. It was dry, but unmistakable. My heart began to race as I followed the stain with my eyes. It trailed from the bed toward the door, where it disappeared under a crack in the wall. I don't know why, but the sight of it filled me with an intense unease. I tried to convince myself it was an old wine stain, maybe left by some careless guest, but deep down I knew it wasn't that. Suddenly I heard something else: a quiet, almost imperceptible rustling sound. It was coming from the bathroom this time, from behind the closed door. I hadn't noticed it earlier, but the door was slightly ajar, just enough for me to see a thin sliver of darkness beyond. My chest tightened as I stared at the gap, every instinct telling me not to go closer. But I had to see. I couldn't ignore the feeling of dread that was spreading through me. I stood up slowly, my bare feet sinking into the worn carpet, and took a few cautious steps toward the bathroom. The rustling stopped as soon as I moved, plunging the room into silence once more. I waited, my heart pounding, listening for any sign of movement. But there was nothing. Just as I was about to step back, I saw something in the mirror over the sink: a flash of movement, like a shadow darting out of sight. I froze, trying to make sense of it. But it was as if someone had been standing there, watching me through the crack in the door, and had slipped back into the shadows just as I noticed. Without thinking, I grabbed my bag and rushed toward the door, determined to get out of that room. But as I reached for the doorknob, I stopped cold. On the other side of the door, I heard a faint but unmistakable sound of slow, deliberate scraping, like someone dragging their nails along the wood. The sound grew louder, closer, as if whoever it was knew I was about to leave and was trying to stop me. I backed away, my heart hammering, my mind racing for a plan. I looked around the room for anything I could use as a weapon, but there was nothing. I felt trapped, cornered. Then, in a moment of desperation, I moved to the window, hoping I could slip out quietly and make a run for my car. But when I pulled back the curtains, my blood ran cold. Standing in the dim glow of the parking lot, just a few feet from my window, was the man from the front desk. His face was blank, expressionless, but his eyes were fixed on my window, unblinking. He didn't move, didn't seem to notice me watching him, but his presence was unnerving, as if he were waiting for something, waiting for me. At that moment, the door rattled, and the scraping sound stopped. Silence fell over the room, thick and oppressive. I looked back at the door, then at the man outside, realizing with dawning horror that I was trapped between two unknown threats, each one waiting for me to make a move. Then, almost as if on cue, the man outside turned and walked away, disappearing into the shadows near the other end of the building. I didn't wait to see where he went. The moment he was gone, I threw open the door and ran down the corridor to my car, my heart pounding, every instinct screaming at me to get as far away from that place as possible. As I sped out of the lot, I glanced back in the rearview mirror, half expecting to see the man standing there, watching me. But the parking lot was empty, silent, the motel's neon sign flickering in the darkness like a warning. For days after, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, of hearing faint, tapping noises in the quietest moments. And when I finally mustered the nerve to look up reviews of the motel, I found something that chilled me to the bone. People had reported strange experiences there for years, sightings of figures in their rooms, sounds coming from the walls, and strange stains that seemed to appear and disappear overnight. It was a place people stumbled upon when they were tired, vulnerable, easy prey. A place where the people in charge seemed more like caretakers of secrets than innkeepers. A place you left behind, but that never quite left you.